Okay, let's briefly talk about the digital euro. Why does the digital euro make sense? Again, these are high-level business slides. First of all, in the industrial era, it makes sense. For example, supply chain topics, logistics, data monetization, and manufacturing. Why does it make sense? Because you can add payment functionality within machineries. Yeah, you have the machine is doing something, or the truck is doing something, the truck drives through Europe, and you can connect sending and receiving money directly into the truck. You don't need the organization anymore where an accounting department is executing inbound and outbound payments. You can basically make the truck part of a payment network in the future. Did it happen yet? No, but companies are in the early process of working on various prototypes there, but it's very, very slow. Then second, capital market is relevant here because on the one hand side you have securities, and on the other hand side you have the digital euro. So in case trading takes place, I give you the euro, you give me the shares based on a bargain price, and this entire process of trading can get much more efficient when you have the euro on a blockchain next to all the other securities also running on the same blockchain. Remittances, we already talked about it briefly. That means sending money across border, not just standard payment routes like euro and dollar, but rather maybe more unusual payment routes. For example, Sweden to Thailand or Dubai to South Africa. Yeah, that's basically where the infrastructure has not been developed so perfectly as in other domains. That's where cross-border payments make sense. Yeah, there is one company in Berlin, it's called Basenode. They have they wanted to employ people in Africa for their IT department. Yeah, Berlin company having identified nice IT guys in Africa, but they couldn't pay them. Why? Because in a couple of African countries, there is no PayPal. So even in case people in Africa want to work, they will not work because they don't get the money, because payment infrastructure is missing. PayPal is not working in a couple of countries. So now with this infrastructure, in this case US dollar stable coins, you can have the Berlin startup. They send 2,000 US dollar to Africa. The person over there is receiving the money based on Ethereum, the wallet infrastructure and everything. And suddenly this person is getting his or her invoice being paid. And then of course the person is also working and contributing. Yeah? So the Berlin startup is having an outsourced IT department now in Africa. And it just works because you can now transfer US dollar stable coins on smart contract platforms. That's two of the key building blocks which we need. And this really showcases these point-to-point on the planet payments, which are then naturally cross-border. Machine economy, that's a very small topic right now. That happens when basically machines will be connected to the internet, IoT and everything, and then machines will be part of payment networks, but it's a long way, right? It might happen maybe in +4 years, +5 years. And where else can we already see the merits and the benefits of the digital dollar? In the crypto assets world, where we already have billions of trading volume in US dollar stablecoin day by day. Right? So it does work in the crypto assets domain. You can see how it works there, and then can infer how it could work in the other domains in the future. So what does work and what will work in the future? That's the discussion which we had already in the beginning. So right now, the euro is sitting within bank accounts on an IBAN address, right? So on an IBAN bank account. Last year, in Germany, for example, the German Central Bank and also a couple of commercial banks experimented with a so-called bridge solution between the IBAN account on the one hand side and blockchain networks on the other hand side. Yeah, that means you are trying to bring the euro to blockchain by simply connecting blockchain wallets to IBAN addresses. Yeah, it's like an API solution, like a bridge solution. It's not perfect, but it's a nice workaround. Unfortunately, the industry didn't really catch up with it yet, but at least it works now. It doesn't work at scale, but it works. So this is like the first version of the digital euro done as a workaround existing since last year. Next, we had stable coins emerging, primarily in the US dollar space, but with the MiCA regulation, it will also be possible to have e-money tokens, so-called EMT tokens, that would be the euro stable coins, regulated with the MiCA, such that the euro emerges on top of blockchain networks. This can be expected now for this year, and it already has happened this year. So our expectation, which we done 2 years ago, was basically right. And it will increase because MiCA allows all this, and therefore we will see more stable coins and broader usage in the future. So that's basically an uprising trend. The prime company working in this field is called Circle, coming from the US. Then we will have the possibility of a synthetic CBDC. I will explain this in a second. But the let's call it long-term version would be the central bank digital currency from the ECB. That would mean the ECB is creating digital money either on an DLT network or without a blockchain network. Yeah, so this right now we would expect that the European Central Bank is not using blockchain technology. So we can expect this type of digital dollar or digital euro emerging as of 2026. It's a huge project, 400 million citizens in the European Union, an entirely new infrastructure. It's a huge project, therefore we can expect it earliest by 2026, probably a little bit later. The best solution, in my personal opinion, would be something like an SCBDC, that means synthetic CBDC. That's something like a stable coin where the money is not issued by a private company, but by the ECB. Yeah, so what would this mean? The ECB launches a stablecoin smart contract on Ethereum and supplies it with euros. This would be the prime solution, but of course, they are not working on this because central banks have some issues with crypto assets, and this would basically really add extremely much value to smart contract platforms, and therefore that's what they are maybe only working on in the background. Except France, for example. France did exactly such experiments with the Banque de France together with the Tezos crypto assets network. That's exactly what they explored last year, and you can also expect that more experiments popping up. I think last week there was a news popping up that a couple of central banks, or even the BIS, like the super central bank, is exploring DeFi. That's exactly what's happening now. You see this very nicely. That's nothing else than the CBDC solution. We would have expected it to happen in 2023, but it now starts to happen in prototypes. So maybe we see it next year at a larger scale. Who knows, right? But you see here that that's very important for me to really emphasize is the digital euro is a generic term. The digital euro embraces all these variants, and the digital euro is not a term dubbed by the central bank. It's just a generic term for all these solutions. What the ECB is doing is a CBDC in euro denomination, but this belongs to the family of digital euro solutions. But you can also see that the euro stablecoin would also be a variant of the digital euro. Yeah, so putting, like some people do it, putting the digital euro equal to what the ECB is doing, it's wrong because the digital euro is a family of solutions.
What's the difference between the SCDBC and the commercial bank money token you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, that's what is the difference between the SCBDC and the CBDC? So the SCBDC would naturally run on an existing smart contract platform exactly the same way as a stablecoin would do it, like in the form of a smart contract. The smart contract could have a size of, say, 2 pages printed out on paper. That's not a complex thing, right? So you use the smart contract layer to organize ownership of an asset, of a token. The smart contract sits on top of it, and the ECB is controlling the smart contract and basically the password to it, the private key. The CBDC would be an entirely different payment infrastructure, not running on public blockchain infrastructures, but either on permissioned enterprise nature blockchain systems or not applying blockchain technologies at all. Like a huge system as we have it in place now, it's called TIPS system, something like the TIPS system for the digital age. Or maybe the tip system twisted a little bit, like a huge IT system with servers and data centers and all kinds of things. That's the CBDC thing, whereas the SCBDC thing is just leveraging existing smart contract platforms and adding an easy to change and not a complex smart contract on top of it.
Tokens, the commercial bank tokens you mentioned. Is that a SCBDC?
Yeah, also, you asked what about the commercial bank tokens. It's not clear yet, because at this point of time, the banks are expressing their wish to think about a commercial bank token, but they haven't really clearly made the case how it would be implemented, on which platform and which technology and so on and so forth. So it hasn't come yet to this down-to-earth operative level yet, this discussion.
It sounds like that's what 3 is, isn't it, ultimately?
Actually, I think for the commercial bank money token, we should add another row here. Yeah, but we left it out because it wasn't clearly on the agenda when we wrote this article back in 2020. At that point of time, basically no one talked about a commercial bank money token. This is a discussion which started maybe last year. So let's talk about geopolitics. And now I think it gets partly exciting, but maybe also a little bit shocking. Because on the right-hand side, we have China. China has started to build their digital money platform called eYuan back in 2014. That's when they have started. Like quickly after Bitcoin emerged, they took up the technology and started first considerations in the field. The system now has basically gone live, but there wasn't really a kickstart solution. But they just add persons after persons, businesses after businesses, and they are now basically live, right, since the Olympic Winter Games. They are transacting with hundreds of millions of people, billions of value, and there are now even considerations in place to expand this payment infrastructure to other Asian countries and maybe even African countries. There are now first DAX companies in Germany, so huge companies from Germany, who are now starting to connect with Chinese subsidiaries to the Chinese payment platform. Why is this? Because they want to receive future revenue for them through the Chinese currency platform. Yeah, that's very crucial, because imagine you are a company like Siemens or BASF. Typically, the treasury function is receiving money on the traditional IBAN account, right? You have a couple of banks and money comes in, you send an invoice, you do revenue, money comes in on the multiple IBAN accounts you have. But in the future, money not just comes in via the IBAN account, but money from China might come in with the Chinese payment platform, so you have to connect to it. And money from another country might come in via US dollar stablecoins, so you have to connect to Ethereum, right? This is an entirely unsolved problem because banks don't offer such a service, and companies like Siemens, they don't want to have this capability being built themselves, right? So this really calls for a standardized solution, which is at this point of time nobody offering. But we can really have the conclusion at this point of time saying that money or revenue in the future will not just come in on IBAN accounts, it will also come in with other technologies, and companies, banks, industrial corporations have to find solutions for this. Yeah. Imagine Siemens is working for a Chinese city, and the Chinese city say, congratulations Siemens, you won the grant, we will do this project with you, but the money we will send you, we will send it with our platform, and you have to connect to our platform. We don't send it with IBAN anymore. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So you see here, that's geopolitics. It's not just any random technology anymore. That's geopolitics. Same in the US. In the US, you don't have a government solution driven by the US central bank, but rather you have elaborations on the digital dollar project, how similarly like in Europe. So how can the US Fed create a central bank digital currency? But they are also in prototype stage, if at all. Yeah, maybe that's just in conceptual mode. But what US has is the US dollar stablecoins, right? So it happened this week that in the press, I think the CEO of Coinbase said, we already have the digital dollar, it's called stablecoin. Let's regulate it properly, let's make it safe, and then we have a solution for the digital dollar. We don't need a government solution anymore. You can make your prototypes and so on and so forth, but the US dollar stablecoins, they work. Look here, billions of trading volume. We have a private solution, it works. So you have for China a government solution which works at scale, and you have for the USA also a private solution which works also at scale. And this brings us in Europe into big trouble because we have neither nor. That means we have a couple of advanced prototypes, but nothing at scale. We have the European Central Bank, which is acting very slow, and it also goes, in my personal opinion, into the wrong direction because it focuses on something like a next version, next generation credit card. That's what the ECB is trying to build, a next generation credit card. But frankly, I paid this bottle of water with the credit card put into the Apple iPhone. So for me, this is next generation. It does work, and the credit card network works very nicely. So I don't really can imagine why you need a next generation credit card solution, which then starts in 2026. Yeah, that's 5 years from now. Also for me, this doesn't make sense. For many other people in Europe, it also doesn't make sense. For the DEA people, it also doesn't make sense. So therefore, the criticisms against what the ECB is doing is getting a little bit louder nowadays because the benefit is simply not clear, right? That's why I find the ECB is acting slow and also going into the wrong direction. But there is some hope that it's shifting maybe its course a little bit. We have national central banks, Germany, France, and others, which are having quite advanced projects. The Banque de France, experimenting with an SCBDC solution, for example. Then we had a couple of years with negative interest rates, which lead to the result that stable coins cannot be operated at profit within Europe. That's why most of the stable coins are coming from the US dollar, because it only makes sense with a profitable business, and profitability requires positive interest rates. Yeah, so that's basically a bad factor here. And then finally, we have the MiCA rules coming into force. I told you that the MiCA is roughly a good regulation, but they have a very big problem there with the stable coins because the hurdles are too high. Remember, the MiCA is the answer for Facebook with their Libra platform, and which never came, by the way. And based on this Libra ideas, the governments and the European Commission drafted the MiCA regulation, right? So they created high hurdles for stablecoin issuers because they didn't want companies like Facebook to have own currencies. So that's why the stablecoin hurdles for the euro are exceptionally high. And this now, please don't smile now, this leads to the crazy situation that the MiCA is a pro-Bitcoin regulation and a contra-Euro regulation. Imagine this, it's a European regulation which basically leads to the fact that companies will have huge difficulties getting the euro on blockchain in forms of stable coins. And on the other hand side, the regulation for Bitcoin is pretty clear concerning price discovery, anti-money laundering, identification of users, custody stuff, and so on and so forth. This is all clear. Hurdles can be met by companies. Companies are working on this, but for the euro, the hurdles are so high. That's such a crazy situation. It's very, very, very hard to believe. Yeah.